response, the quicker you can move on to the next question. Okay. So I'll give you guys your tests tomorrow so you guys can look at them and see what you did wrong. I had 1A, and a lot of you guys got B's. I feel like a lot of you guys got B's, a lot of C's, not too many F's. I think there was like 3, not bad, I have to check. But overall, we can still improve, right? We still have exam 3, and we have final exam, okay? Exam 3, we have a quiz tomorrow, and that's all about your parasites. Oh, sorry, it's Thursdays.
No.
I made it already though. sorry.
Professor!
In my head, I told myself it was tomorrow, so I did it today. Because I'm always last minute with my quizzes. I make them like the day before. So I'm on time, so I can send them to the print shop within the 40, the rule is 48 hours. But I really cut it close about that 48-hour rule. I'm more of like a 24 hours, sometimes 12 hours. They've done me right there though. They do me right. They always print me everything. Yeah, it's Thursday. It's gonna be a group quiz. So make sure that you know the part that you want to memorize, right? As far as the parasite labs go, or parasites go in general. And then if you feel strongly about an answer, I mean, you can not like fight the people at your table, but like, this is why I believe it should be this, right? If you don't speak up, and then you guys get that one wrong, it's everyone's grade, right? Everyone's name is going on that paper, and that's your grade. So don't be like, meet me outside in the parking lot. But if you feel strongly, like, I believe this is B, I know I studied this, speak up. Sometimes is that person wrong? Yeah. I hear you guys fight, I'm like, oh. They're like, I swear, they're like, so what's gonna happen if this is wrong? And they're like, ooh, they're like, okay, fine, I'll go with your answer. And then we grade them, and then they're like, oh, and I was like, you know what? It's fine. It's actually really funny. But you guys can work together. It'll be all about the parasites and viruses. Yes.
So I was eavesdropping on Dr. T's class before I got here, and she was saying that most people still have like good grades right now in their class, and she says that we have all these assignments that are buffers, but she says that a lot of people in her class have A's going into the final and getting B's, and so she's like, you need to be mindful of what is that the same case?
It is the same case. Final, you guys typically don't do very well.
Oh.
But you guys don't do well. I think there's a lot of factors that go into the final. Number one factor is it's all about the diseases. So there's lots of diseases to take into consideration. Number two, am I your only final? No. So you have other finals going on. And then 3, you're already burnt out, right? We're at week 16 and you're like, ugh, I don't want to do this anymore, okay? That's typically what I see. I don't think that my questions are harder for the final than they are for exam 3 or 2. It's just, I feel like there's a lot going on, is what I see. But I feel like the level of difficulty is the same. I feel like all my exams are pretty standard, okay? And I share all my exams with my mentor, like she checks off on it, like, okay, this is good, this is not good, fix this, fix that, like, so we all kind of share information with each other. So if you're taking this class, it's not dramatic whether you take me or you take somebody else. It should be like the same thing, right? So that is, I do see that. I do see a hit when it comes to the final. But it depends where you're at, right? So like if you're a borderline A, could you drop to a B? Yeah. So, and the final is worth the most amount of points. So you could typically, you end up, it depends. It depends where you're at. Cause you can drop, but I've had students like if they have A's and have had an A in on every single exam, and then the final, she got a B, she still kept her A overall. So it just depends where you're at and how much wiggle room you have. The final is, what, 120 points, I believe?
You said 120, but you add extra credit, like
I
20
do
more.
add extra credit. I have about 10 points extra credit on the final. The extra credit is chapter, I believe chapter 24. Whatever the last chapter of your book is, we don't really get time to go over it. So that whole chapter is extra credit. So I'll give you multiple choice questions and 4 free response questions, and then I give you 10 multiple choice problems that are extra credit. So I feel like you guys, I know it's a lot of extra credit, but I feel like you guys need it. I feel like it never ends up being like 110%. So that is true. Yes. But let's focus on exam 3. It's just like having stamina, right? Like you have to have that endurance the entire time. Because I mean, it's happened to me too. Like you have an A and then you completely forget about final, and then I drop down to a B. That happened to me with what class was it? Ecology. Like ecology, my first exams I would have got A's, and then my final, I did not do well on my final, and then boom, I ended up getting a B in the class. And I was mad about that, but it's okay. We move forward. But that did happen to me with ecology. And I had no assignments in that class, so I did not help at all. It was only like 4 tests, and that's it. No assignments. A lot of classes are like that. So just pay attention to like what you did wrong. Again, techniques. What did you do that improved, or what did you do that didn't necessarily help? And like how meticulous or how in detail do you have to be in your studying to get the results that you want? Okay? Utilize your weekends. I know we maybe don't want to do that, but that's what you gotta do, right? Okay. Today we're going into chapter 14. There's 2 lectures, so we're gonna do chapter 14A today, and then chapter 14B, and then chapter 15. Chapter 15 is your cutoff for exam 3, okay? Chapter 15 is not that bad though. Chapter 15 is innate immunity, which most of you guys already heard about in A and B. I feel like the innate part is the same. The only part that's different with micro and A and P is A and P doesn't really cover adaptive the way that we cover adaptive. But innate immunity, I feel like you guys sometimes it's a little bit of a review. This chapter itself is, I don't want to say common sense, but a lot of it is common sense. So it's just like some terms and a little bit of common sense. Okay. For chapter 14, I know it said that this assignment is due this week, but I'm barely telling you about it today because we're barely going to get to it today. So it'll be due next Monday, okay? For this assignment, you can work with a group up to 4 people, okay? So you can work in a group of 2, a group of 3, or a group of 4. It's up to you guys, okay? However you want to manage your folks is what you can do. Okay. So what your job is to pick one of the following topics and answer questions about it. So your options are polio, influenza, prions, typhoid Mary, talk about typhoid fever, valley fever, and Ebola, okay? You can watch the video and answer the questions. I will also say some of these videos don't really explain all of the information. You kind of just have to do your own research. So if you don't have time to watch the video, you can just look up the answers, okay? The videos are kind of cool. Influenza is depressing, prions is depressing, Ebola is depressing, So if you don't want to be depressed, I would go for polio or like typhoid Mary or like valley fever. But you guys decide. Okay, answer these questions, write everyone's name, and that's it. Okay. Have that one person you trust submit it, and that's it. So what do we do next Monday?
How do I know?
You put everyone's name on it. Because it doesn't have to be your lab group. This is just whoever you want to work with. Okay. Pathology. Okay. The study of disease. Okay. Etiology. The cause of a disease. Okay. So if I say, what is the etiologic agent of the flu? What would you say? What is the etiologic agent of the flu? It's influenza.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. I'm like, I hear it.
I thought you meant like, I was thinking of like spores in the air, like when you cough.
So etiologic agent, that is the cause of the disease.
Okay.
So for influenza, that would be, for the flu, that's influenza, right? If I say, what's the etiologic agent of valley fever, you would say Coccidioides immitis, right? We're comfortable with that one. That's exam 3.
Mm.
Okay. Pathogenesis, this is how a disease develops, okay? There are structural and functional changes on the host caused by a disease, okay? Can you have a bacteria or virus in you and not see disease? Yeah, right? So when you look at typhoid Mary, okay, she's what we call a carrier. So you can carry something and not actually see the disease, right? The way I remember it, dis-ease, dis means not and ease, so you're not at ease. You're seeing signs and symptoms, right? You're not at ease. Oh, I think that's kind of fun. Okay. So, right, infection means that you have an invasion or colonization of a pathogenic organism. Disease is an infection that results in a change from the normal healthy state, right? So disease, you're not okay. So that's the difference between infection and disease. So just because you are colonized with the microbe doesn't mean that you're necessarily seeing disease. Okay. Transient. Okay. Last week we did the hand washing lab, right? So what did we do? We put our little fingers, stabbed our nails, we did different hand washing techniques, and then we closed them and we put them in the incubator. Okay, I pulled those out over the weekend. Don't be alarmed with how dirty they are. Okay, it's fine. So here's the thing. On your plate, you're gonna see a bunch of like tiny white or gray little colonies. Those are typically your flora. So those are gonna be your good microbes that are on your skin, right? Those are part of your flora, we like those. If you see big blotches, typically these guys just take over the entire area of that quadrant. Those guys are transient microbes. So transient microbes are microbes that are just on your skin temporarily, essentially. So these are bacteria that you've picked up. So if I went around, I'm touching everything, right? I'm touching plastic, I'm touching this desk, I touch this keyboard, and then I put my hand on that quadrant, I would see a lot of transients, right? Things that I just picked up. But when you wash your hands, right? And then time goes by, who comes back? Flora come back? Flora come back. Yeah, your flora. Your regular microbes, will rise again, okay? So hopefully, even though you wash off both flora and transient, your flora come back, okay? Symbiosis means that you're living together, okay? There's different types of symbiosis, right? You can have antagonistic, which means they fight each other. You can have mutualistic, which means that they help each other, right? You can have commensalism, which means one is benefiting and the other does not benefit or gain. So that's like the microbes in our gut, that's commensalism. Have you guys heard of like the egret and the buffalo? Maybe? No? It's like these egrets are these birds that are on top of the water buffalo, and as the water buffalo stomps through the swamp, every time it stomps, bugs jump up, right? They jump up every time the buffalo stomps and is traveling through. And so what these egrets do is they keep their mouth open, and as the insects jump with every stomp, the insects land right in their mouth. How beautiful is that, right? If you're hungry, you just open your mouth and food goes in there. So egret benefits, water buffalo unaffected, right? It's not really gaining, it's not gaining anything, and it's not losing anything. So that would be commensalism.
Shark and remora.
Yes, the remora and the shark, right? So that fish is eating off, right, the tiny bacteria, and then the shark, nothing, right? Areas where you should have flora, areas where you shouldn't see any microbes, okay? Okay, yeah, commensalism, mutualism, parasitism, okay? Those are 3 relationships. Symbiosis just means you're living closely together. And what is that specific relationship? Mutual, commensal, or antagonistic, okay? Mutual benefit, mutual is when both of them are benefiting. So I like to think of, have you guys seen Finding Nemo? Okay, so Nemo, right, the clownfish, and the sea anemone, okay, they have a mutualistic relationship. What does the clownfish get? The clownfish gets a home, right, and protection, because the sea anemone has stingers. So if another fish tries to go inside the sea anemone, it will get stung. But Nemo, right, actually doesn't get stung by the sea anemone. The way the sea anemone gains is that the clownfish actually eats small invertebrates that would otherwise take over that sea anemone. And then the sea anemone also feeds off of the feces of the fish. So they have a mutualistic relationship, okay? Parasitism. Parasitism, that's when one organism is benefiting and the other one is slowly losing, right? So that's gonna be, for example, like a tapeworm, right? A tapeworm is feeding off all of the nutrients in your body, and what's happening to you? You're losing all nutrition, right? You're slowly dying. Does the tapeworm want to kill us right away? No, because it is not guaranteed another host. So it does this slowly, but it is negative. Okay, areas where you should not see any bacteria. Should we see bacteria in the kidneys? Should we have bacteria in there?
No.
No. Should you have bacteria in your heart?
No.
Brain?
No.
Pancreas?
No.
Do we have bacteria? Your sinus. You shouldn't have it in your sinus. All of these areas that do not have bacteria or shouldn't have bacteria, we call them organs that are devoid. Okay, devoid means do not have bacteria. We also use the term axenic. Okay, something that's axenic means that it should not have bacteria, right? Should you have Another area that should be devoid is like the uterus, right? Testes, right? All these areas should be devoid, no bacteria. But what about your mouth? We got bacteria there, so that's not actinic. Your intestines, so that's where we got the most, so that's not actinic. Right? Do we feel okay with that? Who should have, what about blood? Should we have, no. Cerebrospinal fluid? No. Semen? No. Urine? You shouldn't, but typically when you pick up, if you have in your urine, it's because some sort of infection. Typically though, by the time, if you don't clean yourself, that's why I have to do like a clean swab. The urine picks up bacteria as it's exiting, so from the extremities. So you shouldn't have bacteria in the urine if you do a clean catch.
What was that word you were using? Exenic?
Exenic. Or devoid. When you are born, okay, if you are born vaginally, the very first microbe you're gonna pick up is lactobacillus, okay? Lactobacillus is what is typically found in the vagina, and this is what keeps it very acidic, okay? If lactobacillus, due to a superinfection, right, for some reason your lactobacillus has been disturbed and been killed off, what's gonna happen to the pH? It rises, so it becomes more basic. When it becomes more basic, who can take over? Chapter 3, who can take over? Not seated.
E. coli?
Starts with a C. It's a yeast.
Candida?
Candida, right? Review exam 3, right? Candida can take over. Okay. So typically, lactobacillus keeps the pH low, like pH 4. If lactobacillus, due to some sort of superinfection, taking too many antibiotics, or it gets disturbed somehow, the pH is going to go up, and then Candida can take over. Okay. So lactobacillus and Candida are another example of an antagonistic relationship, right? Where lactobacillus is benefiting us, right? Okay, so yes. So yeah, question?
So you said it prior to giving birth, the lactobacillus doesn't increase. That's when it comes to like infection.
So if you're taking like a lot of antibiotics, or for some reason you're taking something that kills off your lactobacillus, then the lactobacillus isn't able to keep a pH of 4, and the pH starts to go up. When that pH goes up, Candida's like, aha, it's my time to shine. I love pH 6, pH 5, here I go. And just takes over, and you get a yeast infection. Okay. When you have natural birth, right, as a baby, when the baby passes through the vaginal canal, the very first bacteria it's going to pick up is lactobacillus. Okay. After that baby's born, what do you do with the baby? You do, they come out kind of gross, but where are you going to put them? On your chest, yes, just on your chest, right? For a few reasons. 1, warmth. 2, boom, they're going to start picking up your flora, right? Put them on mom's chest, whoever the father is, right? Dad's chest, they start to pick up that bacteria, right? And then, what else do babies do once you take them home? If I hand a baby a toy, what's it gonna do?
Put it in the mouth.
Put it in his mouth, right? And when do they stop doing that?
Never.
Never, yes. That's a great answer, never. They never stop doing that. So, what are they doing? They're slowly introducing microbes, colonizing their gut slowly and slowly, right? That's why babies, when they're first born, if you notice when they poop, it's like some weird concoction. It's because they have no microbes in the gut. So it always looks like yellow and like some weird, like what the hell is that, right? It's because they don't have any microbes, okay? Once they start to develop microbes, right? One of the good ones in our gut is E. coli, right? What if you get E. coli in your urinary tract system? Is it our friend there? No. E. coli is going to be the most common cause of a UTI. It's usually yourself, like it's your own E. coli, right? Either like not wiping correctly, or like sweating and not switching out your underwear, right? Multiple different ways that it's your own self, right? Opportunistic microbes. So opportunistic microbes, these ones are typically part of your residence, or it can be transient, but you don't typically see them causing disease in you, okay? So again, things like candida, that's opportunistic, right? You have candida, just very low amount, so you don't have the disease, okay? But again, if you're taking too many immunosuppressant drugs, radiation, if you're immune compromised, if you're very young, very old, or if you're stressed out, that's when the transient or something that's typically a resident, that's just in small amounts, can come up, okay? If the microbe gets into the wrong part of the body, right? So we said E. coli, again, our friend in the gut, but if it gets into our blood, is it our friend there? Heck no, right? That's why UTIs it's important that you treat a UTI, because if that infection gets to the kidneys, right, then that means it can get to the blood. If it's in the blood, septicemia, right? So you can have basically that bacteria travel anywhere, because blood is a highway that's across your whole body. So if you have an infection in the blood, it's infecting everything. Okay? And then super infections, right? That's when you disturb your flora. So our example, right, was with taking too many antibiotics with either lactobacillus or E. coli in the gut, right? So normal flora that benefit and protect us: Candida in the vagina, E. coli in the intestines. So for exam 3, if I tell you what is a beneficial antagonistic relationship on our body or on the body.
Michael.
2 examples, boom, right there. Right? Candida in the vagina keeps who down? I'm sorry, Candida gets kept down by who? Lactobacillus. And then who keeps E. coli down? I'm sorry, who keeps E. coli keeps who down? C. diff. Boom. Probiotics. So probiotics are when you are taking bacteria to help recolonize certain areas of your body, right? When people are taking or have taken too many antibiotics or are immune compromised, they suggest taking probiotics. There's different ways to take probiotics. There's like liquid probiotics, there's pills. Everybody has a different gut though. So what can help one person may not help somebody else. So somebody can be like, oh, I love taking the pills. And someone else will be like, I can't do the pills. That hurts my stomach. I prefer liquid, right? Because we've learned, right? Some of us can eat day-old pizza. Some of us can't. We all got a different gut. So it just depends, okay? So how do we classify infectious diseases? We classify based on signs and symptoms, okay? Frequency of occurrence, so how often they occur, the severity and duration of the disease, and then extent of host cell involvement. Okay. Signs and symptoms, right? A symptom is a change in the body that is felt only by the patient as a result of a disease. So that's gonna be like headache, right? Symptom, you can't see it, right? If I say, I'm fatigued, that's a symptom, right? If I say, I have pain, you'd be like, where is it, right? Pain where? Or from 1 to 10. That's something only I feel, but you can't see. A sign is something that you can see, right? So let's say, if your patient has diarrhea, can you see that? Definitely, boom, you can see it, right? If they have swelling, can you see that?
Yes.
If they're bleeding, can you see that?
Mhm.
Yeah. Right, vomiting, rashes. A lot of rashes, skin rashes, not only, but many times, it's a virus. A lot of times when you see skin rashes, it's typically a virus. The only thing is, when you see it on the skin, that virus has already traveled everywhere it needs to travel. The last place it was gonna go was the skin. So, like measles, right? Measles is, it's a viral infection, and it's respiratory. But how do you see it? You see it as spots, red spots on the skin. Okay? If someone comes in with red spots to the hospital, it could be many things. But if you check their throat and you see these white spots, they're called colplet spots, that means measles. So what should you do? Yes, throw a mask on, because measles is airborne, and then isolate, okay? And then syndrome is when you group a specific category of signs and symptoms together to categorize a disease, right? You can say fever, headache, right? Temperature of this to that, spots that look like this or that. All those things together characterize a specific disease. Okay? Incidence. The difference between incidence and prevalence. Incidence is how much of your population is contracting a disease at a specific time. Okay? So the incidence rate is only talking about new cases. When you talk about prevalence, prevalence talks about old cases and new cases. Okay, so prevalence talks about how serious something has been for a long time. Okay, and I'll show you the difference on a graph. So, if we're looking at, okay, number of cases per 100,000 population. So, the blue line, right, this is new cases. Okay, so you have a spike in cases, and then your cases go down, right? No more cases. Look at prevalence. Prevalence picks up, and it continues to grow even after incidence, and it takes a lot longer to die down, right? Because this is taking into consideration old and new. This is just new. Okay. How serious is a disease? You can talk about morbidity and you can talk about mortality. So morbidity is a number of people affected by a disease during a specific set of time. So you can say number of people affected divided by 100,000 people per year. So you can be like 56 people affected, right? Mortality is how many people are dying from that disease during a certain set of time. So you can have a high morbidity, right? Lots of people are being affected per year, but your mortality can be low, right? We can have, let's say, like 12,000 affected per year, but then, only 3 deaths per 100,000. Okay, so you know how severe something is. One, how many people are being infected, and then two, how many people are dying. So morbidity, how many people get it? Mortality, how many people die. How can you get a specific disease? Okay. A communicable disease is one that's spread from one host to another. So person to person too. Okay. Chicken pox, right? Person to person. Measles, person to person, that's airborne. Genital herpes, right? Typhoid Mary, that's, even though that's fecal oral, that can be, right, person to person. And then tuberculosis, right? A contagious disease is a disease that is easily spread from one person to another. So that's gonna be chickenpox, measles, okay? Something that's non-communicable, that means it's not spread person to person. So tetanus, right? How do you get tetanus? So it's, you get it because you introduce it to your blood. Typically, you're going to poke yourself, right? A lot of times it's not the rust itself, but usually something that's rusty has the bacteria, right? And so then you poke it and you introduce it to your skin, right? I can't give you tetanus, right? And then it's the toxin that's causing disease, right? So I can't give you the toxin, right? Another example, valley fever, right? If I have valley fever, I can't give it to you, right? So those are non-communicable diseases.
Prions is one too.
Prions, you can give it person to person. Depends how you got it, right? If I eat brains, that'd be communicable,
Mhm.
right? If it's genetic, that's person to person, your genes. But, yeah, it depends on your scenario. Like, you could give it to somebody if you ate them. But you're not passing it through touch. Not through touch, you gotta eat something.
This all like there's like a viral one and then there's like the classic one. And sometimes there's been instances where it gets transferred with like blood transfusions. But it's really rare. Or like iatrogenic when like they don't properly autoclave like surgical equipment.
Yeah.
I've seen that too. I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know you try not to like think about all the different. Did you guys go home and think about prions? No? Okay, good, you shouldn't. But it's fine, we're all alive. But that's crazy, right? Okay. So examples of what is communicable, so you can give person to person. Contagious is just really easy, right? If somebody has chickenpox, stay away. Measles, isolated too. And then non-communicable, so you don't give person to person. Okay. Sporadic. Sporadic means that this disease occurs occasionally. So you can occasionally have like an outbreak of something, so like typhoid fever in the US, and we'll talk about it. You can have something that's endemic. Endemic means that it's persistently in the population. So like valley fever is endemic to Bakersfield because valley fever, we always have cases of valley fever here, right? The common cold. The common cold is always around. Okay? Epidemic. Epidemic is when a disease is acquired by many hosts in a short period of time, right? So, like COVID, right? That caused an epidemic. Ebola, okay? Influenza can do this too, right? If you have a pandemic, that means it hits worldwide. So can you have an epidemic turn pandemic? Yeah. And typically these pandemics, these epidemics are caused by something that is communicable, right? something that's given person to person. Okay, so an endemic, okay. So a case that is persistent all of the time in a population at low levels in the population, low morbidity and low mortality. So these are not typically considered to be a public health threat. So here we see that cases reported, 25, right, 22, 22, just below 30. So small amount of cases consistently occurring, okay? Here, what about this guy though? 170 in that one time. What would I call this peak? Does that look endemic? This looks more like what? Like an epidemic, right? A boom, a random epidemic. The rest of this though, endemic, right? Small, persistent, and then boom, something is high right there. So like, what happened right there? Right? This portion is epidemic. Boom, you had a really high amount of cases in a short amount of time. The rest of this graph though, low persistent numbers. So this portion is an endemic, and this portion would be an epidemic. Okay. Do we have something like measles, right? Typically, we don't have measles. We did get some cases of measles though, I believe after COVID. That's because a lot of people weren't going to the doctor and getting vaccinated, right? If you had a baby during COVID time, are you trying to go to your regular doctor visits? Not really, because you're trying to stay away from people. So some people weren't vaccinated for that reason. And then some people, again, vaccines are just so damn good at their jobs, we forget what they did. And so we stop vaccinating, and then you'll see something pop up, right? Lack of immunity, right? So with the measles, people say you don't need it. And so when you stop vaccinating, what do you see? Cases come up. Cases come up. Diphtheria. So this happened with diphtheria in Russia. So when you have your Tdap, right? T is for tetanus, D is for diphtheria, P is for pertussis, which is whooping cough, okay? In Russia, again, Tdap, this is something that you have to recurrently take. And they were like, you know what? We don't have a lot of diphtheria cases. Why do we need a vaccine? They stop vaccinating, and then what happens? Epidemic. Okay. Who does this? Yeah, it's bad, right? Diphtheria. This causes. It releases a toxin, and who's it really gonna affect? Your old and your newborns. Okay. With diphtheria, this causes your throat. You basically make like a second membrane, and it becomes really hard to breathe. Okay. So, who has a really hard time like coughing up that membrane? Would be like babies, and then old people because they're really weak. Okay. So, what do you get when you stop vaccinating? Boom, epidemic. Herd immunity. So herd immunity is the goal, okay? The goal means that we have a large amount of the population vaccinated, okay? Typically anywhere from 70 to 90%. It depends on the specific disease. Some need higher herd immunity than others. So, for example, like with COVID, we wanted to get like 90%. I believe we hit maybe like 60%, and that helped a lot. Something like measles needs like 95% of the population vaccinated. But here's the story, okay? So here, we have, if you are red, that means you're infected. If you are green, that means you're immune, so you have the vaccine. If you're yellow, you're susceptible, okay? So in this crowd, over time, if only 10% is immune, what can happen to these individuals? They can get infected, right? So you can have a lot of people get infected, okay? Here, 50%. So we have 50% of the population is vaccinated. We have 1 infected and the rest are susceptible. You can have some become infected, but what these green people are gonna do is they're gonna help prevent the spread of that disease, right? Because if this infected person talks to this green person has been vaccinated. So even though they come into contact with it, immune system should shut it down. And so now this green person isn't passing it to somebody else, right? Versus here, if red person talks to this yellow person is gonna get it. And if this yellow person talks to another yellow person, is gonna continue to give it, right? Here, all these green people, these are like shields. Like, virus shall not continue with me, okay? So you're gonna have lower amount of cases. If you reach 90%, anywhere from 70 to 90%, that's herd immunity. That means most of the population is vaccinated, and you only have a few, right, that 10%, because sometimes some people can't be vaccinated. Some people have genetic disorders, are immune compromised, so they actually cannot receive a vaccine. So your job as someone who can receive a vaccine is to be a shield for that small 10%. But then when you have people revert back to this scenario and say, I don't need it, then that small 10% that really can't get the vaccine, they're not gonna be protected. Okay. Questions? Herd immunity. So the herd is protected. You gotta play with the words so you remember them, okay? Okay, meningitis, okay? We've had some epidemics of meningitis occur in Central Africa every 5 to 12 years. Certain factors that contribute to this are environment, other diseases, lack of herd immunity, strain virulence, so if there's a random mutation within a strain and boom, it's more virulent, and timing, okay? So something in the air, right? You don't vaccinate. And sometimes there's just random mutation. Okay, the difference between common source outbreak and propagated epidemic. A common source outbreak is when you have contact with a contaminated substance. So it means contaminated water supply or improperly handled food, right? So you got E. coli in your food, or your, coli and polio in the water, right? Or cholera or whatever, right? That's gonna be a common source outbreak. So here you have boom, high peak, and then what do? We shut it down, right? So this is something that you are, I guess, ingesting, right? So you have an outbreak, right, due to food or water being contaminated. These guys, look, we shut them down really fast, right? Something that's propagated is spread person to person. Look at the blue curve. How long does it take to shut this blue curve down? We don't. We don't even shut it down. Because as long as you can give it person to person, is not going away, right? It takes a really long time, and it's always kind of gonna linger there. Like, are we gonna eradicate COVID? No, it's not really gonna go anywhere, okay? Are we gonna have high instances though? No, right? So when they say, oh my gosh, we have an outbreak of like E. coli in the lettuce. Okay, yes, crazy, but boom, we just shut it down, right? Recall all the food, clean all your products, back to business in like 7 days, right? Quick, a few days, boom, 3 days, shut it down and fix it. Something like this, propagated, person to person, it takes forever, right? Because if I tell people, if you're sick, stay home, do we do that? Does everybody listen? No. So, congratulations. Well, we will constantly, it takes a lot longer to shut that down, right?
Do we go into depth of like for example, like COVID, they say that there's like a mutation in the virus and people stop getting vaccinated and then there's like another giant peak. Is that something that we can take into account for the purposes of exam 3?
I mean, if in that scenario, what we could do, since we have information about COVID, we can go in and then use that information to develop the new vaccine and then just mass ship that out. That's what we would do. And that, if that happens, that's something we could do. Okay, so how diseases interact with populations. So again, just some terms. So here, sporadic, right? Randomly, you have an endemic. So if you look at the number of cases, here, endemic, 140. It looks like this is happening, this happened at a specific time then. Here, this one's epidemic. So just tracking your cases and knowing, okay, what's going on, right? Is this always present? Is it only present at a certain time? Or is it just random? You randomly just had a spike. Okay, so severity or duration of a disease. Something that's acute means yes. Example, influenza. I think of like an acute triangle. That's the one that has like the small one, right? Acute. So it's short. You have it just right now. So acute disease is just right now. I don't know why. That sits in my head, the triangles. Something that's chronic means that you have for a really long time. So that would be my obtuse triangle, right? So the acute one you have for a little bit. It's acute because it's only lasting a little bit of time. Chronic, obtuse, forever, right? I don't know. That I play visions in my head. Okay, so the difference between acute and then chronic. Do you guys remember some chronic latent viruses? Latent?
Herpes.
That's herpes, right? And then, okay, so herpes is latent. Okay, what about chronic? So always shedding. What's one that's always shedding? It doesn't go dormant, it's just chronic the whole time.
Would cancer? I don't know if that's
Hep B, Hep C, HPV. And then those babies go cancer. Yes.
So would HIV be latent?
HIV is latent.
Okay.
Chickenpox is latent, right? And which other one? Herpes. Herpes is latent, right? Goes down and up, down and up. Okay, you can have something that's subacute, so your symptoms are somewhere in between acute and chronic. Examples, gingivitis, right? Gingivitis, that means you have infection in the gums. So if you brush your teeth and your teeth bleed or your gums bleed, congratulations, gingivitis. Okay. Gingivitis can be not that bad, or it can be a little bit bad. So when you go to the dentist and let's say you bleed a little bit, I'm like, it's not that bad. Just make sure you're flossing, right? Gingivitis, it can get so bad that you lose your teeth. Okay. So it could be not so bad, just a little bit of blood, or you could be losing your teeth from not flossing. Okay. There's your dental lesson for the day. And then you have latent, right? So latent are the guys that like to go dormant and then rise up during stress, right? When you're immune compromised, when you're old, right? Chickenpox, latent, and then when it comes back during stress or old age, what do we call it? Shingles. Shingles. So varicella means chickenpox. Varicella zoster means shingles. So the virus is varicella. Varicella rooster means you got shingles. That specificity is important for the final. Not yet. Okay. We can start just throwing that in there, right? Varicella chickenpox.
Subacute means something that's not as bad as anything.
It's like
It
recently happened,
depends.
but it's not bad.
But it can get.
I'm thinking about like a subacute subdermal cancer. Where it's like
So you think about like gingivitis is a good one because gingivitis means you can have inflammation in your teeth. So if you have that inflammation right now, if you continue to have good you brush your teeth and you floss, you could get rid of gingivitis, or the severity of your gingivitis is very low. But if you don't pay attention and you never get your teeth cleaned and you never floss, the gums can become so inflamed, the ligaments in between the teeth become so loose that you lose your teeth. So it depends, right? Subacute means it can just be for now, left untreated, can become chronic. Can go chronic if you don't pay attention to it. Okay. Local infection is something that is only in one particular area. Okay, so for example, a UTI, right? You get E. coli in your bladder, right? Hopefully it doesn't get to the bladder. But if you just have E. coli, like in the uterus, right? It's localized to just the uterus. But if it then gets to the bladder and then the kidney, and then from the kidney can go to the blood, then that can become systemic. Systemic means everywhere in the body. Okay? So when you have something go systemic, it's everywhere. Okay? Examples of how it can go everywhere: blood, right? Lymph, right? Those are portals to transfer things all over your body. Measles is systemic, right? When you get measles, it's respiratory, so it's localized in the lungs, spreads all over your body. By the time you see it on the skin, boom, it's hit everywhere. It's everywhere at that point. Systemic is more dangerous. Because do we want something to hit the brain, or the lungs, or the heart? No. Okay. Focal infection means that something began as a local and then can spread through lymph or blood to a specific area. So bacterial endocarditis. So back to my dental example, okay? When you're getting your teeth cleaned, okay, and you start to bleed, can you have bacteria enter into that blood, right? Then when that bacteria enters into the blood, that blood goes straight to the heart, and that causes endocarditis, okay? So infection of the heart. That's actually a very common way to get endocarditis. So what do? Clean your mouth, right? 2, if you are old, they have you take antibiotics before your teeth cleaning to reduce the amount of bacteria that you have in your mouth, right? If you're gonna have any sort of oral surgery, like a root canal or anything like that, they want to reduce the amount of bacteria you have in your mouth so you don't get any bacteria straight to the blood, because then it can go straight to the heart.
I have a deep cleaning tomorrow. I'm traumatized.
It's okay. I've had a root canal. I've had a root canal, and I am fine. I'm fine. And you're not old, so you're chilling. And you have nice teeth. I feel like your mouth.
Because I get them cleaned often.
There you go. So you're fine. You don't have to worry about it. Septicemia. Septicemia means growth of bacteria in the blood. Blood poisoning or systemic infection. Bacteremia is bacteria in the blood. Difference being you can have bacteria in the blood, and then there's bacteria that likes to grow in the blood. So it uses some of the components of the blood to grow. Okay, which one's worse? Septicemia. Toxemia, that means you have toxins in the blood. So like with tetanus, right, it's the toxin. Botulism, right, it's the toxin that we're worried about. And then viremia, that's going to be virus in the blood.
Toxemia, it can be like non-living too.
Yeah, because the toxin doesn't live. Toxin is just like a protein.
I was thinking like carbon monoxide poisoning.
It's a molecule that is toxic. But when we think about toxins, we want to think of products that are produced by bacteria. So like toxin A, toxin B. With Clostridium, right? Clostridium produces a toxin as well. So we need to make sure that we bind up all those toxins as well as the bacteria. Primary infection. Primary infection, this is an acute infection that causes an illness, okay? Secondary infection is when an opportunistic takes advantage of that primary illness, and then you have a second infection, right? So for example, pneumocystitis, right? Pneumonia, consequence of AIDS, right? With COVID, right? When you had COVID, what was the common secondary infection? Pneumonia, right? You were in the hospital because of that pneumonia. And then it was the pneumonia that brought you down, right? Some sort of bacterial pneumonia that you got. And then subclinical, no noticeable signs or symptoms. So inapparent infection. Inapparent infection means that you don't see anything. So when we talk about Typhoid Mary, so Typhoid Mary was a carrier, and she didn't know she was a carrier because she had an inapparent infection. Infection means that she carried the microbe, right? She carried it, but she didn't have disease. So it was an inapparent. She was a carrier. You could not tell, she didn't know that she had it because you didn't see any signs or symptoms. You didn't see the disease. Okay. Some people can have poliovirus, same way, where you don't see the signs and the symptoms, but can they still be giving it to people? Heck yeah. And then hepatitis A. Hepatitis A also fecal oral. So you're gonna eat something to get hepatitis A. Hepatitis B and C, that was the fluids. A is the type that you consume. You eat it. And that's how you get it. Okay. Patterns of disease. So some things that make you more susceptible. Inherited traits, so such as sickle cell, climate and weather, fatigue, age, lifestyle, chemotherapy. So climate and weather, this is one where, this is where I will argue a little bit with my sister. She has some truth to it. She's not 100% there. So for example, another myth for Hispanics are when you take a shower, you can't go outside, right? Because you're gonna get sick because your hair is wet, okay? The thought process, the reasoning is because you're cold, you're gonna get sick. Did cold air make you sick? No, but if you are cold, can that dry up your mucosal linings, therefore making you more susceptible for something to not get trapped and expelled out and actually go in? Yes, but something had to enter. It's not the air, okay? So there is some truth to it, but it's not the air. Something had to go inside, right? A microbe. Microbe causes disease, not air. Okay. Had this talk a while back. Okay. Yeah, are we okay with that? That's what I mean by weather and climate. Okay. So you can be more susceptible. The air didn't give it to you. Okay. You had to have inhaled something. When you're tired, right? When you're super tired and your body system is low, are you more susceptible for something to take over? Yeah, right? When you're older, your immune system is not very good. When you're young, your immune system is not very well. Lifestyle, so how you eat, right? Diet, exercise, right? Exercise plays a role as well. Exercise because, if you do cardio, that keeps your blood circulating. Okay, here's how a disease develops, or the progression of a disease. The stages, first you have incubation period. During incubation period, you don't have signs or symptoms. Why? Because you don't have enough of that microbe to see anything, okay? Then it starts to pick up. Prodromal phase. So you're maybe starting to get a tickle in your throat, but you don't really feel the signs and symptoms, right? Then you hit invasive. This is when you're okay, now my throat is shut, it's dry, I'm coughing up mucus, right? This is where you feel like crap, okay? You feel like crap, and the very peak is called a chyme, okay? At a chyme, you're gonna do one of two options, okay? You can either die or get better, okay? So, we can hit the decline phase, okay? We'll hit decline, so you start to feel better. You start to see less signs and symptoms, right? Because you have less of that microbe, right? Microbe is going down, symptoms are becoming more alleviated, and then we hit conventional period. So just getting rid of it. Nothing really left, right? During invasive phase, can we die? You could, right? Or you can get better, okay? But during this period where your immune cells are working really hard to bring down that microbe, can another microbe take advantage and immerse? Yes. So this is when you're more prone to a secondary infection. When you have your primary infection in decline phase. Okay. Questions? What's happening in this graph? So know the phases and what's happening in each phase.
What happens at invasive phase?
Yes, it can happen at invasive. And a kind, right, is that peak. You either died or you're gonna get better. Hopefully we get better and we just hit decline phase.
If you get a secondary infection during the decline, it goes back to the run, or does it go back to invasive?
I have another line talking about the second microbe that came over. Okay. This would be for that one particular disease. I'd add another line with the other one. I put like a red line. And that red line would start here and it would do incidental, prodromal, invasive, akine, and then hit into dekine and convalescence.
Convalescence is when you're back to normal?
Yeah, you're getting back to normal already. So every microbe, typically, this is how they develop. Can some be more narrow? Yeah. Can some be more wide? Yeah, but typically, this is the pattern that you see. Okay. How do you spread infections? You can have an infection sit in a reservoir. And we've talked about this already, right? In our parasites. So humans can be reservoirs, right? Animals can be reservoirs. Non-living things can be reservoirs. A big one is water, right? So non-living would be something like water. Okay. Mode of transmission, how did you get it? Is it contact transmission? Is it vehicle transmission? Or is it a vector? Okay. So, typhoid Mary, okay? Typhoid Mary is a human reservoir. So this lady has an inapparent disease. So she carried typhoid fever. She did not know that she carried typhoid fever because she had no signs and symptoms. But what typhoid Mary would do is she was making pies. And she was baking these pies and she was giving them to the community. She did not have, can you eat food from everybody's house?
No.
If you know how they prepare meals, right? What I'm getting at is some people may not wash their hands before cooking you a meal. So typhoid Mary was not washing her hands before she cooked these meals. So she was infecting her food and then feeding the food to people, and then people were getting it. Okay? Typhoid Mary was like, ain't no way it's me. Okay? It is not me, it is not me, it is not me. They actually ran her out of town because she kept killing people. And they sent her off to an island to be alone because she wouldn't stop baking her damn pies and giving them out to people. And people kept dying.
Maybe she was a serial killer.
New movie. New movie. Huh?
Because why wouldn't you just stop?
Because she's like, it's not me.
Oh, it was her.
But she's like, it's not me.
Oh,
I'm not
she
sick.
knew.
It's not me. So, you can watch the video on Typhoid Mary, but she kept infecting and killing people in the community because she was a carrier. Okay? Fecal oral. Okay, she carried it in her gut, but she was not sick. Okay. You can also have animal reservoirs, right? So Rabies, typically bats, skunks, foxes, dogs. Lyme disease, here we typically see them on deer, okay? Right, cats, toxoplasma, yeah, okay? So how did they get from animal to human? Direct contact with an infected animal, direct contact with a domestic pet, litter waste, right, toxoplasma, contamination of food or water, consuming infected animal products, all right, our tapeworms, our roundworms, vectors, right, and then by air from hides, furs, or feathers, okay. So zoonosis just means animals, right, zoo means animal, not animals. Okay. Non-living reservoirs, soil, water. Those are your big two. In the soil, that's going to be Clostridium botulinum and then Clostridium tetanus, right? Tetani. Those are the two big ones that you have in the soil. And then you have, yeah, those are the two really bad ones. Okay. And then you have water, right? Water, we talked about all the different cysts that you can, right? All the different protozoans in the water. Things like Vibrio cholera or Salmonella typhi, right? Typically water. But Typhoid Mary just had it. She was a carrier. She just killed everybody. But yeah, they did send her off to an island. I believe she just died there. That's so sad. That's so sad, but I don't know why she just couldn't contain herself from infecting other people. I don't know.
Serial killer.
Could we have handled that better? Probably.
Why are we blaming her when people kept eating it?
That part.
How is she the problem?
How was it? We didn't watch the video. You didn't watch the video? Figure out what was happening. Okay. Other non-living reservoirs, spoiled foods. Spoiled foods. Okay, we're gonna talk about examples of direct contact. So that can be, and then vehicle and vector. So contact, you can have direct contact. So person to person. So something like kissing, touching, sexual intercourse, the common cold, STIs, AIDS, staph infections. Those are all examples of direct horizontal contact. Okay. That also includes any of the fecal oral. So the Salmonella typhi, that's included. Okay. Unhygienic practices, that was included, right? Vertical transmission, right? When I hear vertical, I just think birthing, right? Birth. So what can you get? Okay. Things like syphilis, gonorrhea, or toxoplasma. But you only give toxoplasma when you have an active infection. Okay, if I have, like right now, if I have it in my brain in a cyst, and I'm pregnant, I'm not giving it to my child. It's if you get toxoplasma as you are pregnant, that's when it goes to the baby. Okay. Syphilis, gonorrhea too, as you're delivering, can it pick it up? Yes. Okay. Breastfeeding counts, and passage through egg sperm. Okay, so vertical thing, mother to child. Okay, all the different ways mother can give it to a child. Indirect. So this is when you touch something and someone else touches that something. So if I, okay. Bedding, right? Think of like bed bugs, right? Like bed bugs. You guys that work in healthcare, you guys know, right? Okay. I'm like traumatized about that. Toys, right? So kids that go to daycare, they're usually always getting sick. Everybody's getting sick at the same time because they're touching toys, and then they're sick, and then another kid touches it, puts it in their mouth, touches it, they get sick. So that's indirect contact, right? If you're sharing cups, right? I touch a cup, I drink out of it, I leave it there, someone else drinks out of it, boom. So it's indirect contact. So I'm not kissing the person, but I'm putting my mouth on a cup, and then they grab the cup and they touch it. So that's indirect contact. Versus direct horizontal would be kissing. Yeah. Okay. So examples, right? HIV through a needle, or hepatitis B, also through a needle. Droplet transmission. So that means that it's in your sneeze, right? So if I sneeze on you, if I sneeze and you walk across the room, you're not gonna get it, okay? It's contained in the droplets. So if you come into contact with the droplets, then you can get it, okay? So who can do this? Influenza, pertussis, pneumonias, right? COVID, these are all droplet, not airborne. Airborne is measles, okay? So is it contained in the droplet versus airborne? Yeah, COVID. Okay, vehicle transmission. Vehicle transmission, this is gonna be water, right? Drinking contaminated water. Foodborne, you're eating food that's not prepared correctly, or you're eating food that was contaminated, or it wasn't refrigerated properly. Airborne is gonna be vehicle transmission, so that's gonna be measles and tuberculosis, okay? So they travel far. If I had measles and I sneeze right now, it's gonna hit Carla all the way in the back. Okay. But you don't give it it is, it's airborne, but not person to person. It would be soil. Yes, vehicle. Nosocomial infection. Nosocomial just means you got it at the hospital. So you're in the hospital, not doing very well, and then you get something else. This can happen, right? If you're in there getting a procedure done, if you're just in there getting a checkup, if you're there for a few days, if you got something in the hospital while you were at the hospital, it's called nosocomial infection. There are certain common nosocomial infections to get, right? We'll talk about a few examples, but nosocomial just means you got it when you were at the hospital. Okay. 56. Okay, we'll continue this later. Okay.